There's a plant growing in a crack in your driveway right now that kills MRSA in a petri dish. You've stepped on it this week. You probably sprayed it last spring, and the bottle you sprayed it with might be doing something far worse than killing a weed. We'll get to that. Here are the numbers nobody puts side by side. Every year, Americans spend over $2 billion on lawn chemicals. $2 billion. $500 million of that goes to killing one plant, the dandelion. That same year, drug-resistant infections kill more than 1.2 million people, more than HIV, more than malaria, and the pipeline of new antibiotics has nearly run dry. Sit with that. We pour billions into destroying these plants not because they're useless, but because they're untidy. And in the lab, some of them are turning out to be among the most chemically sophisticated antibacterial organisms on the planet. That's not a wellness slogan. It's in the peer-reviewed literature. Compounds that lower the kill dose of last resort drugs, crack the armor bacteria build to survive them, and strike through pathways our pharmaceuticals never touched. 14 of them, most growing within 20 feet of your front door. We're counting down from 14 to 1, and number 1 is the strangest of all. A weed the Anglo-Saxons swore could defeat death itself. They weren't being poetic. They had a reason. But stay with me to number 4. Because for most of human history, across the northern forests of the world, there was a wound dressing people reached for when help was days away. Gray fuzz growing on the bark of an old tree. Why it actually worked is one of the strangest stories on this list, and it's coming. This is the history and the science of these plants, not medical advice. A serious infection needs a doctor, not a tea. Keep that in your back pocket the whole way down. Let's start the countdown. Number 14, cleavers. The lymphatic whisper. Most people know this plant as an annoyance. Gallium aperine. The sticky weed that grabs your jacket in tall grass and coats you in 1,000 tiny hooks. The monks called it cleaverwort. And in the herb gardens of the 12th century, where healing knowledge passed down through generations of Benedictine brothers, they used it for one thing: swollen glands, lymph nodes that wouldn't drain, the silent internal swelling that came before any visible infection. Here's what those monks were watching. Cleavers carry iridoid glycosides, tannins, and a specific compound called aspergillosid. In lab studies, aspergillosid shows activity against several gram-positive strains, including the ones behind skin and soft tissue infections. Now follow this. Traditional Chinese medicine classed cleavers as a lymphatic herb. Ayurvedic healers in India used the same plant Madhu parnica for the same things: swelling, infection, glandular stagnation. 3 traditions, no contact between them. Same plant, same use. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern. To use it, gather young stems in early spring before the hooks harden. Press a handful through a juicer or cold steep it in the fridge for 8 hours. Never heat it. Heat destroys the aspergillosid. Drink a small glass in the morning, empty stomach. The taste is mild, almost neutral, like the water left after washing fresh spinach. Number 13, common mallow, the soothing wall. You've walked past this one 100 times. Malva neglecta, low, sprawling, with rounded scalloped leaves, colonizing the edge of driveways and the broken ground along fences. The name says it all: neglecta, neglected, and it carries one of the oldest, most reliable jobs in the herbal record. Mallow is dense with mucilage, a slippery polysaccharide that coats and protects inflamed tissue, plus anti-inflammatory anthocyanins and flavonoids. That makes it a classic demulcent. It calms a raw throat, an irritated gut. Roman writers ate it specifically to keep the digestive tract smooth and quiet. Across the Mediterranean and the Middle East, it's gone into soups and stews for centuries, half food, half medicine, the line never clearly drawn. To use it, cold infuse a generous handful of fresh leaves in room temperature water for a few hours. Cold protects the mucilage heat, thins it out, and destroys it. The result is faintly green, slightly slippery, almost flavorless, mild beyond anything you'd expect from something you've been mowing down for years. Number 12. Wild mint, the membrane breaker. Everyone knows mint. Almost nobody knows Mentha arvensis wild field mint, which spreads aggressively through damp ground and gets ripped out the second it escapes the garden. But it's carrying a serious chemical payload: menthol, menthone, pulgone, and a family of phenolics that includes thymol and carvacrol. Those last two matter. In lab assays, thymol and carvacrol have been studied against Pseudomonas aeruginosa, one of the more stubborn hospital pathogens, and the mechanism is unusual. They don't hit one internal target. They appear to jam the bacterial cell's energy pump, the H+ ATPase, while also blocking efflux pumps. Efflux pumps are how bacteria spit antibiotics back out before the drug can work. Jam that pump, and a struggling antibiotic can get back inside. To use it, steep fresh leaves just off the boil for 5 to 7 minutes, covered so the oils don't escape with the steam. It's bright, cooling, sharply aromatic, familiar mint with a wilder, greener, peppery edge. Drink it for digestive spasms, for congestion, or just as a daily tonic. Number 11. Mullein, the lung's old friend. Tall, pale, woolly, Verbascum thapsus rises out of waste ground and roadside gravel like a soft gray candle. Kids rub the velvet leaves, adults pull it. But for as long as there are records of European and Appalachian folk medicine, mullein has had one address in the body: the lungs. It's rich in verbascicide, mucilage, saponins, and iridoids. The mucilage soothes and coats irritated airways. The verbascicide brings mild anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial activity. Traditional healers reached for it for bronchitis, for dry hacking coughs that wouldn't quit, even the warmed flower oil for the ache of an earache. One of the gentlest plants on this list, and one of the most specific. To use it, steep dried leaves or flowers in hot water for 10 minutes, then strain it through a fine cloth or coffee filter. This part isn't optional. The tiny leaf hairs irritate the throat if they get into the cup. The flavor is soft, faintly floral, lightly honeyed. Drink it warm when a cough has settled into your chest and won't leave. Number 10. Shepherd's purse, the battlefield clot. You'll know it by the seed pod's small, flat, heart-shaped capsules running up the stem like a string of tiny purses. Capsella bursa pastoris. It grows in the most trampled, abused ground you can find. Which fits. That's the kind of ground humans have always bled on. Because this plant's oldest job is stopping blood. Shepherd's purse contains tyramine, choline, acetylcholine, flavonoids, and saponins, and the combination works fast. It promotes clotting and tightens blood vessels, helping a wound close. When stronger clotting agents ran short in wartime, field medics fell back on this common weed. To use it, the fresh plant is far stronger than the dried, which loses potency fast. A brief, strong infusion of the fresh plant was the traditional preparation. But understand the line here: anything involving serious blood loss is a matter for a doctor, not a tea. The taste is sharp, green, peppery, a little like cress. A plant most people have never heard of, doing a job most assume only a pharmacy can. Number 9. Self-heal, the name that explains everything. Prunella vulgaris was named with unusual honesty. Self-heal, the plant that heals itself, and the old healers believed you. It grows low and purple-flowered across lawns and disturbed soil, utterly unremarkable. Medieval surgeons called it carpenter's herb, the first thing reached for when a tool slipped and opened the skin. The Iroquois used it for throat ulcers. Chinese medicine used it, xia kusao, for infections of the glands and throat. The active compound is rosmarinic acid, the same one in rosemary and lemon balm, with documented antimicrobial activity against oral and respiratory bugs. You may have read about rosmarinic acid before. Here's what almost nobody mentions. Self-heal produces compounds that appear to stop certain bacteria from sticking to tissue in the first place. Read that again. Not just attacking the colony once it's established, blocking the earliest step, the moment of attachment, before it can take hold. To use it, a simple infusion, a tablespoon of fresh leaves and flowers in a cup just off the boil, 7 minutes, strained. Slightly bitter, mildly herbal, smooths right out with raw honey. Drink it at the first scratch of a sore throat. Number 8. Chickweed, the healer that works through winter. Here's a problem every plant healer eventually hits: winter. The season ends, the ground hardens, and most of nature's pharmacy closes for the year. Infections don't take the season off. Stellaria media chickweed solves it with quiet brilliance. It sprouts in autumn as everything else dies. It keeps growing under a light snow. It's often the only living green thing in a February garden. And those small, star-shaped flowers and tender, water-filled stems carry compounds studied against Candida and gram-negative bacteria, including strains of E. coli. The active agents are saponins and a flavonoid called rutin, studied for both anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial activity. The saponins are why the plant feels faintly soapy between your fingers. In Appalachia, a chickweed poultice was poor man's medicine, the whole fresh plant crushed, mixed with a little rendered lard, and pressed against boils and abscesses, the fat holding the compounds against the skin for hours. Here's the detail most sources skip. Those saponins are water-soluble but heat-sensitive. For topical use, warm the plant in oil at no more than 40 degrees Celsius for 6 to 8 hours, never hot. For a drink, a cold water infusion overnight pulls the saponins far better than hot tea ever will. The flavor is shockingly pleasant, sweet and tender, like the first bite of young sweet corn. Harvest before the flowers fade. Once it seeds, the stems toughen and the chemistry turns bitter. Number 7. Plantain, the bandage of God. Now we reach the plants with serious research behind them. Plantago major and its narrow-leaved cousin Plantago lanceolata, the broadleaf weed in compacted soil, along driveways, through gravel, in every neglected corner of every lawn in the temperate world. The medieval name bandage of God wasn't poetry, it was an instruction. Plantain shows up in the Leech Book of Bald, one of the oldest surviving medical texts in English, from the 9th century, prescribed for infected wounds and festering ulcers. The Cherokee used it. The Iroquois used it. An ocean apart, the same plant, the same job. The mechanism is a compound called aucubin. And here's the remarkable part. Crush the fresh leaf, rupture the cell walls, and an enzyme kicks in. Aucubin converts to cattle pole, and cattle pole converts into compounds that, in the lab, directly inhibit Staphylococcus aureus, including methicillin-resistant strains, MRSA. The Cherokee had no laboratory. They had thousands of years of watching. The research is only now catching up to why they were right. A second compound, allantoin, drives cell repair and wound healing, and allantoin is in commercial wound creams today. It's also free, abundant, and growing through the cracks in your driveway. Studies show these compounds also dial down interleukin-6, a key inflammation signal, helping the wound calm and move into repair. To use it, crush fresh leaves and press them onto minor cuts, stings, or irritated skin. You'll feel the cooling within minutes. For a drink, cold steep a handful of fresh leaves overnight. The infusion is mild and vegetal, like the water at the bottom of a salad bowl. Green, quiet, unremarkable. The healing is not. Number 6. Dandelion, the liver defender with a warrior's stubbornness. Taraxacum officinale, the most hated plant in North American lawn culture. So hated that the global market for products built to kill it runs past $500 million a year. Sit with that. $500 million a year, killing a plant. Hippocrates prescribed that 10th century Persian physicians recorded for the liver that the Chinese listed in official imperial pharmacopoeias for over 1,000 years. Dandelion's bitterness is the point, not a flaw. The bitter compounds taraxacin and the taraxacerins stimulate bile and liver activity, exactly the internal stagnation old healers saw as the prelude to illness. Modern research finds taraxacin shows inhibitory activity against gram-positive bacteria tied to internal abscesses. And the root carries inulin, a prebiotic fiber that feeds the gut bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids now considered central to gut immunity. That matters more than it sounds. Broad-spectrum antibiotics clear-cut the gut microbiome the way herbicide clear-cuts a lawn. A plant that feeds it back is doing something a pill can't. To use it, simmer a tablespoon of chopped root in 2 cups of water for 20 minutes. Don't hard-boil it. A steady simmer preserves the volatile compounds. The result is dark, bitter, deeply earthy. Add raw honey if you need it. Roast the root first and the flavor turns towards smoke and dark chocolate. The French have drunk it as café de pissenlit for centuries. Sensing this hated plant carried something the body wanted. Number 5. Purslane. The biofilm breaker the whole world eats except us. Stop here, because Portulaca oleracea isn't really a weed at all. It's a mainstream food on 5 continents and has been for 3,000 years. Greeks fold it into salads. Turks call it semizotu and cook it with yogurt. Mexicans call it verdolagas and braise it with chili and pork. The United States is one of the few food cultures on Earth that looks at this plant, calls it a weed, and sprays it. What everyone else knew without the biochemistry, Purslane is loaded with marine-type omega-3, specifically EPA, at levels almost unheard of in a land plant. Most plant omega-3 is ALA, which your body has to convert. Purslane delivers EPA directly, the same form found in oily fish. But here's what puts it on this list. The mucilaginous polysaccharides in its stems and leaves, that slight slipperiness when you chew it raw, appear to break up bacterial biofilms. Biofilms are the armored fortresses bacteria build to survive. Inside one, a bacterium can shrug off antibiotic doses hundreds of times higher than would normally kill it. Purslane's polysaccharides appear to scramble the quorum-sensing signals bacteria use to build those structures. The research is early, but breaking biofilms is one of the most valuable things a compound can do in the resistance era. To use it, eat it raw in salads, pleasant saltiness, faint sourness, the crunch of young cucumber, or sauté it briefly with garlic, olive oil, and lemon until it goes silky. 2 or 3 minutes, no more, or you'll destroy the omega-3 and the polysaccharides. Harvest mid-morning, after the dew lifts. Number 4. Beard lichen, the gray fuzz that beats the superbug. Here's the one I told you to wait for. For most of human history, across the northern forests of the world, this was a frontline wound dressing. When help was days away and a wound had gone hot and red, people stripped the pale, hair-like lichen off old bark, packed it in, and bound it. And only now do we understand why it worked. Usnea barbata, old man's beard. The active compound is usnic acid, and it's one of the most potent natural antibacterial agents ever documented against gram-positive pathogens. This is not folklore-grade evidence. In lab assays, usnic acid hits a minimum inhibitory concentration around 16 micrograms per milliliter against Staph aureus, roughly 8 against the cavity bug, strep mutans, and 25 to 50 against clinical isolates of MRSA. The mechanism is brutal and direct. Usnic acid depolarizes the bacterial membrane, collapses the energy gradient the cell needs to live, and shuts down the machinery it uses to build its walls. The cell leaks itself to death. Then it does something even more useful. Paired with the antibiotic norfloxacin, it drives down the dose needed to kill resistant MRSA, jamming the very pumps the bacteria use to survive the drug. In lab models, it stopped mixed biofilms of staph, strep, and candida from forming on titanium dental implants. One critical warning, the line between knowing this plant and reading half an article about it: usnic acid is for external use. High doses of isolated purified usnic acid taken as an oral supplement have been linked to serious liver injury, and the FDA has warned against exactly those concentrated capsules. The lichen on the tree is one thing. The purified extract in a pill is a real risk. Respect the difference. Number 3. Stinging nettle, the blood infection warrior in armor. Let's deal with the obvious thing first. Yes, it stings. Urtica dioica is covered in microscopic hollow needles, silica-tipped hairs that inject histamine and formic acid the instant you brush them. The burn lasts hours. Insects avoid it, grazing animals avoid it, and gardeners, after one bad afternoon, reach for thick gloves and a bottle of weed killer. Here's what they're erasing. Nettle root contains Urtica dioica agglutinin UDA, a lectin protein with a specific, unusual mechanism. UDA binds to and disrupts the membranes of drug-resistant, gram-positive bacteria. Not a broad chemical flood, it targets specific surface proteins on the cell. European researchers have flagged this as potentially significant precisely because it works so differently from conventional antibiotics. The Romans carried nettle seed to Britain and planted it deliberately. And in the First World War, when cotton ran short, the German military wove nettle fiber into wound dressings, never knowing those fibers were quietly releasing UDA and formic acid into the wound. A passive antiseptic built right into the bandage. To use it, heat destroys the sting completely. 30 seconds in boiling water, and the young tops become greens that taste like a deeper, more mineral spinach. Blanch the top 4 to 6 leaves before it flowers. But for the root compounds, the rule reverses. The UDA lectin breaks down above 60 degrees Celsius, which is why traditional root preparations were cold processed, never boiled. As a gentle dried root tea, it's been used in European herbal practice for prostate and seasonal allergy support, worth raising with a qualified practitioner. The nutrition alone is staggering, more iron than spinach, plus serious calcium and vitamin K. Number 2, Yarrow, the soldier's companion, a story written in blood. There's a scene that repeats across human history, in civilizations that never knew each other existed. A man is wounded, deep, dirty, bleeding badly. And someone reaches for the same plant. Feathery leaves, flat-topped clusters of white flowers, an aroma like wild sage crossed with warm camphor. Achillea millefolium. The name carries the story Achillea from Achilles. Homer records Achilles using yarrow on his soldiers' wounds, staunching blood and holding off the infections that killed as many men as enemy spears. Classical sources called it Herba militaris, the herb of soldiers. But the convergence is what should stop you. The Chinese recorded it in the Shennong Bencao Jing, the Navajo used it, the Norse used it, the Ojibwe used it. Nearly every warrior culture of the ancient world independently landed on the same plant for the same purpose, and now science is starting to confirm why. In 2018, research out of the University of Thrace in Greece showed yarrow essential oil had efficacy against MRSA in lab conditions, with results the researchers put alongside vancomycin, one of the absolute last resort drugs. Let that register. A roadside weed, in the lab, in the same conversation as a drug of last resort. The mechanism is itself a lesson. No single compound does it. The sesquiterpene, lactone, achillin, the flavonoid apigenin, and several lesser-studied borneol derivatives appear to work together, which is exactly why isolated single-molecule extracts underperform the whole plant. And there's a second effect. Yarrow compounds appear to stimulate macrophages, the white blood cells that hunt down bacteria. Read that carefully. In the lab, it doesn't just kill bacteria on contact, it may wake up the body's own defenses to go after the infection harder. A standard antibiotic doesn't do that. To use it, steep 2 teaspoons of dried flowers and leaves just off the boil for 10 to 12 minutes, covered. The taste is assertive, bitter, aromatic, a camphor note at the back, a warmth that lingers. The old practice was to drink it at the first sign of a cold coming on. Achilles, you'll notice, was not waiting for a clinical trial. Number 1, Creeping Charlie, the one that will not die. You know this plant. You're almost certain you've torn it out of a flower bed in frustration. Glaucoma, heteracea, ground ivy, creeping Charlie, alehoof, gill over the ground. It spreads by runners, roots at every node, takes every corner of every garden you've ever tried to keep perfect. Shade, sun, dry soil, clay, the cracks between paving stones, it doesn't care. You spray it, it retreats, it comes back. It's been coming back for a very, very long time. The Anglo-Saxons called it alehoof, and that name matters because the Anglo-Saxons were not romantics. They named things for what they did. Alehoof, the plant used to clarify and preserve ale. Before hops took over as the bittering agent for beer across Northern Europe, brewers used Creeping Charlie, with German records confirming the practice back to the 10th century. which means everyone who drank that ale was unknowingly taking in one of the most powerful antibacterial plant compounds in the European tradition. The active agents are a polysaccharide called glycomannan, and more importantly, ursolic acid, the same triterpenoid in apple skin and rosemary, but concentrated with unusual density in Creeping Charlie's small, scalloped, kidney-shaped leaves. And ursolic acid does something most antibiotics do poorly. It's been examined for activity against anaerobic bacteria, the populations that thrive in oxygen-starved tissue, in deep and necrotic wounds, exactly where ordinary antibiotics struggle to reach. And here's the line that should give you chills. Anglo-Saxon healers used ground ivy specifically for necrotic wounds, flesh that had begun to die. That is not a coincidence. That's the exact niche where ursolic acid research now points. But it does two things, not one. While it goes after the infection, ursolic acid also appears to stimulate the growth of new capillary tissue, fresh blood vessels, pushing into damaged areas to begin repair. The old healers described it in plain, almost poetic terms. The plant that drives out the poison and calls back the life. We now know, at the molecular level, those two things happen together. Destruction and regeneration in the same leaf. The Anglo-Saxons believed it could defeat death itself. You can see now why. To use it, gather fresh leaves and young stems in spring or early autumn when the ursolic acid peaks, before summer heat pushes the plant to flower. Make a simple infusion, a tablespoon of torn fresh leaves in a cup of warm water, not boiling. 70 degrees Celsius is plenty. Boiling degrades the polysaccharides. Steep 8 minutes, covered. The flavor is one of the most distinctive on this list. Its mint and sage kinship is there, but with something deeper underneath, resinous and forested, like the floor of an old woods after rain. This plant doesn't need you to tend it. No watering, no fertilizing, no protection. It needs exactly one thing from you: stop destroying it. A final word? And it matters more than any single plant on this list. There's a thread running through every entry here, and almost every discussion of herbal medicine skips right past it. The compounds that make these plants work are fragile, narrow temperature tolerances. They break down under prolonged heat, under UV light, under the industrial processing that flattens a living plant into a standardized powder. The aucubin in plantain starts converting to inactive compounds within hours of being heated too hard. The EPA in Purslane oxidizes the moment the plant is dried hot. The UDA lectin in nettle root denatures above 60 degrees, which is exactly why the traditional preparations were always cold processed. Ursolic acid is fat-soluble, not water-soluble, which means a simple tea captures only a fraction of it, and the Anglo-Saxons brewed Creeping Charlie in ale and fat for precisely that reason, centuries before anyone could explain the chemistry. So here's the question these 14 plants leave behind. How much of what we think we've lost isn't the plants at all, but the knowledge of how to prepare them? How many times has a researcher tested a traditional remedy, used an extraction method that destroyed the very compound they were hunting for, found nothing, and written folklore in the margin? The plants are still here. They survived everything we threw at them. The knowledge of how to work with them is more fragile than the plants themselves. And now the part I promised at the very beginning, the part that turns this from a curiosity into something urgent. We spend $2 billion a year spraying these plants out of existence, and the chemical most often on the trigger is glyphosate. Glyphosate kills plants by shutting down a single enzyme in something called the shikimate pathway. That pathway doesn't exist in you or me, but it runs across almost the entire bacterial kingdom, including the bacteria in your soil and your water. Which means every spring, across millions of acres, we apply one of the largest chronic chemical pressures imaginable directly onto the world's bacteria. And bacteria, under pressure, adapt. Recent surveys have found clinical hospital pathogens carrying co-selected resistance to both glyphosate and last resort antibiotics at the same time. In one study comparing bacteria from protected wetlands to strains pulled from hospitals, The hospital isolates showed near total resistance to glyphosate formulations, and 74% of them were already resistant to carbapenems, one of the most powerful last resort antibiotic classes we have. The genetics suggest glyphosate resistance and antibiotic resistance are being selected together, then carried out of the soil, into the water, and into the hospitals where the superbugs are killing people. The 1.2 million deaths we opened with. So read the title one more time. You're not just destroying the medicine growing in your yard every year. The act of destroying it may be helping breed the very infections that medicine was meant to fight. If that question matters to you, if you believe the relationship between ancient wisdom and modern science is more complicated and more interesting than most people assume, like this video and subscribe. Share it with someone who still spends Saturday mornings at war with their lawn. They deserve to know what they're really killing. And tell me in the comments, which of these 14 is growing in your yard right now? I want to know.